Phony emails, phishing text messages, menacing phone calls, and even scammy faxes. We're all inundated. In this episode, we look at about a dozen or so of the more common scams and frauds percolating through our community, including one that I found really amusing. Please stick around till the end when we share a few tips that will help protect you and your organization against these monsters trying to get their hands on your money. Hey guys, I'm Mary Schaefer, founder of AP Now, the place where you get all the latest business intelligence you need if you work in, manage, or have responsibility for the accounts payable and/or payment function. Now, the theme for these frauds, and they are frauds, is all the same. It's usually if you don't take some immediate action, something dreadful will happen to you. So let's start with the first one. And there are many of them. I've just picked out a dozen or so that, percolated through my emails recently. I'm happy to hear about more that you may have in the comments below or in an email. So, okay, the first one is one where they just alter the URL slightly. So, for example, when Yahoo sends you your mail, the URL is mail.yahoo.com. And so this one, they've changed it to mail.update.yahoo.com. And you really have to be really alert to catch that. And to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't have known which was the right one. Okay, that's one. The second one is kind of a newer one that's going around. And this looks like it's a threatening type notice from Nacha. And the subject line says, Nacha web debit rule compliance, your time is up. And then, when you open it up, it goes on to talk about it. And of course, like all the other phony emails, it conveniently has a link that you can click and fix the problem. Okay, so the next one, it came across my landscape, and it was another one of these play on email addresses. And of course, it was looking to, get money or click here. I don't remember at this point which one it was. And it was supposedly from PayPal. Now, PayPal has been inundated with frauds, but this one, the URL was pretty slick. It was pay.pal.com. And so you really have to be looking closely to see that little extra dot between the pay and the pal. Because as you know, the right URL is paypal.com, not pay.pal.com. Okay. So the next one, I first saw this a few years ago, and then it periodically shows up in my email. And it usually comes from somebody I know, and it is from somebody I know, and their account has been hijacked. And then the message goes something like this: I'm on a trip and lost my wallet, or my wallet was stolen, and I need some money to get back home. Now, the first time I saw it, and this is how I knew right off the bat it was a phony, was it came from a guy I had met at a conference maybe 6 months earlier. And we'd had, basically one conversation, and then somehow I got on his email list. And I remember when I was first looking at it, I thought, you don't know anybody closer than me to call when you lost your wallet. And then, of course, the light went off and it was like, duh, this is a fraud. Now, if instead of coming from somebody who I didn't know well, it had come from one of my children, I might have been, upset and trying to take some action. So I lost my wallet on a trip. Be aware of that one. Next one, I can't believe this is even happening, but it is phony text messages. And they're always purporting to be from somebody, threatening you. And the latest batch of them, if you will, supposedly comes from the IRS. Well, right off the bat, the IRS doesn't text people. Okay. So that's your first clue that, something wasn't right there. Okay, the next batch relate to phony phone calls. And again, always looking for immediate action. Many times they'll be coming from or supposedly coming from the bank. And then the one that I got really aggravated me was someone pretending to be from the IRS looking to settle up my debt. Well, I don't have any IRS debt, so that was a no-brainer for me. But what really upset me about it is whoever these crooks were, they're looking to take advantage of people. They're preying on people who are already experiencing financial difficulty, and now they're going to make matters worse. But I guess they don't care. Now, if you've been, watching my stuff or listening to me for any amount of time, you probably have gotten the same emails that I have, all these phony, please change my bank account emails allegedly from a supplier, and these rush wire transfer requests from this imaginary CFO that we don't even have. But, there's just been a slew of these, and we've got some additional information to help you with that, to help protect yourself. But just be careful, be careful, be careful. Okay, the next one I kind of thought was amusing, and it came from something called the National Security Department, whatever that is, and it was an Apple FaceTime information disclosure. So here, the criminal kind of know the right buzzwords and they're trying to use them. And it looked like an official document. There was none of the typos or poor English. But again, of course, it was a phony, and never, never, never click on those links. Okay. Now, before we get to the last few examples and my humorous example, or at least I think it's funny, and our tips to protect yourself, which isn't funny but real practical, if you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up. And if you loved it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We produce new content for the channel 3 times a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays are devoted to payment and accounts payable issues. And unfortunately, fraud is a very big part of payment issues these days. And Saturdays are reserved for Wordle. And hey, YouTube's made a funny little GIF from the like button, but you can only see it if you hit it. So why don't you go ahead and hit the like button? Okay, the next set of emails, and they could be from your bank, they could be from PayPal, allegedly. This is all allegedly, are the emails that go, your account will be deactivated if you don't. And again, whatever it is, it has to be done immediately. So the two themes, again, in this, like many of the other frauds that we talked about, are you have to take action or something bad will happen to you and you must do it immediately, always immediately. They don't want you to have time to either think about it or, heaven forbid, ask somebody about it, because then you might realize that it's a fraud. Okay, the next one is employees who receive an email, supposedly, again, from a corporate IT department asking them to install some new instant messaging software. Now, before you click on anything, I would pick up the phone and call, because unless you know about this and you're expecting this, most organizations will not use some instant messaging software. But even if they are going to, you should know about it from a different mechanism, not just, getting this email from IT that says, please, download this. Okay, the next one, and I thought this was kind of interesting. I call it a variation on the Nigerian inheritance scheme. And this one I got, and it came by fax. I don't know if the person thought that maybe a fax would make it look more legitimate. We've got an old fax machine here, and it is old, and we get a fax about once a month. It's either something like this usually, or somebody looking to sell trucks or cars. I don't know. What can I tell you? Anyway, this one came from a Canadian lawyer, and the person was using the name of a legitimate lawyer. I did check on the internet, and there was somebody by this name in what looked to be like a very presentable Canadian law firm. And they said that I had inherited $12 million, and this gentleman would be willing to help me get it. But he had a few conditions. Number one, he was insisting that 10% of it go to charity. I'm guessing he thought that that might make it look a little bit more legitimate. I don't know. And then he said he'd split the rest 50-50. Now, there were a few things here. First of all, I had a good chuckle over the 50-50. I thought, even in a scam, you're going to come across as grabby. If he wanted to make this look legitimate, he should have said something like, we normally get 33%, but because of the amount of money or some other excuse, I'll only take 20%. But no, he was being grabby here. And then the part that really gave me a chuckle is, my last name is Schaefer, and that's a pretty common last name, but it's my husband's last name. It is not my last name. So if there was any inheritance going to a Schaefer, it would be going to him or one of his siblings, definitely not me. And it's unlikely that there's $12 million there. But, hope springs eternal. But anyway, it was clearly a fraud. Now, I promised you that I had one that would make you laugh before I give you some tips. And the one that makes me laugh the most are these LinkedIn requests that I've been getting sporadically from famous people. The first one came from supposedly Michael Bloomberg, and I looked at that one and I got a chuckle because they did actually have a picture of the real Michael Bloomberg, but it was so blurry and I don't know, it must have been copied a million times. And I thought, oh yeah. I've had one from a Saudi prince. I don't know what that was about. And then from Ryan Reynolds, the movie star. Okay. And a few others. So have you gotten any of these? Let us know in the comments below what famous people have been trying to connect with you so we can all have a good chuckle. Because believe me, with this stuff, we need it. Okay. Now I promised some protection advice, not only telling you what they are. And by the way, sometimes just knowing what these things are is all that you need to know, because then you'll recognize it when you see it. And it's like, oh, yeah, that was that thing she was talking about. All right. So that's part of why I share all these examples. Okay. Now, protection advice. I want to say these are easy, but then if it were, I wouldn't be doing this broadcast and you wouldn't be listening to me. So let me put it another way. These tips are things that every single individual can implement and can do, and they don't cost anything, and they're not difficult. Okay, so number one, for starters, and it really breaks my heart to tell you this, but I think it's important. Be skeptical. Be skeptical of anything that is out of the ordinary, anything that looks too good to be true, because you know that old saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and just question everything. Sometimes just by sitting there and saying, hey, does this make sense? You'll be able to figure out that it's a fraud without even taking it one step further. But sometimes these things, they do look legitimate. The next thing that you do is verify before you click on anything. Verify by picking up a phone and not using a phone number that's in the email, but a phone number that you have elsewhere. Verify, verify, trust but verify, verify. Don't click on anything. And in fact, I like to take it one step further and not click on anything in an email if I can possibly avoid it. But if there's another way to get to the information, like if it's something from your bank, then just log into your bank account and backtrack your way to whatever you're supposed to do. And I call that an alternative. So be skeptical, verify before you click on anything, and then educate. Educate yourself and your staff, okay? Because as I said earlier, sometimes just knowing about what these frauds are, what the latest fraud is, what's going on, you'll be well positioned to protect yourself and protect your organization. Okay. And when I talk about educate, I don't only mean yourself, although obviously that's a really good starting point, but also everyone that you work with. I like to say from the CEO down to the person who sweeps the floor, because the criminals are really good at maneuvering through your processes and through your systems and finding that one little weakness that they can exploit or take advantage of. Now, clearly, one of the first things you should do, and as I kind of alluded to in some of the examples, is look at the email address to determine if it's a real address or if it's a phony address. But as you know, this is easier said than done, as the criminals are getting really good at creating phony looking URLs and email addresses. Do you think you can always spot a phony? We recently did a broadcast with examples that you can use to test yourself and your team. It is part of our fraud protection playlist. That's right, we've got a playlist of these short videos that are all on YouTube and many in our podcast, but they're all on YouTube. You can watch either one of them right now using the links that will appear momentarily on YouTube and is in the show notes below. As always, I appreciate your thumbs up, your subscribes, your shares, and your comments. Good luck.